Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do. And just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh my God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down because during that time, they're already trying to figure themselves out. And when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it, because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. Doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm gonna do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Yeah.
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
And Origa, who is here in person, our gold sponsor, Old Mutual, our silver sponsors, Deloitte and APSA, our clothing and prize sponsors, Exquisite Hanger and Ayanda Naturals and IntelliSkin, our TV screen sponsor, Hershey's, our speakers and panelists, our esteemed participants, a very good morning to all of you. And may today be the beginning of rewriting rules around being like a girl. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you to the 2022 International Women's Day Breakfast hosted by Luminary. My name is Fortune Gamanya, and I will be your host this morning. As I was reflecting on today, I wondered what would encapsulate the break the bias that we are talking about this morning. And I couldn't help but go back to the think like a girl or act like a girl video, because I believe it demonstrates how easily biases or stereotypes can disadvantage people. What is a bias? Inclination or prejudice for or against one person or a group, especially in a way that is considered to be unfair. And today, we are engaging in conversations that break the bias against us women. I was very quickly reminded of Jacinda Ardern's quote that you would have seen on the website when you were registering. And it reads, one of the criticisms I have faced over the years is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, or maybe somehow, because I'm empathetic, it means I am weak. I totally rebel against that. I refuse that you cannot be both compassionate and strong. So a little bit about International Women's Day. It is believed that the first ever International Women's Day was commemorated on the 28th of February in 1909. Ironically, it actually had been suggested by a Ukrainian-born Teresa Malkiel, who was a socialist activist and educator. In those times, the IWD was a lot about suffrage, gaining the right to cast your vote. And that is why I say women are human before they are women. So it is imperative that our voice is involved in anything that impacts the human race. So I'm sure you're all wondering, why did I say yes to this conversation? There's a lot of discovery that can happen in the room today. So for us to connect, I'm going to ask you to please quickly stand. If you can please stand up from your seat. And I'm going to ask you to look around the room and then find a stranger. A stranger is a person who you have not met, you didn't say hi to, you don't work with them. So that should be easy. And you've got 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So here is the instruction. Here is the instruction. Here is the instruction. Determine between the two of you who's got the longer hair. And then the next instruction, shorter hair, you're going first. So in 60 seconds, you're going to tell your longer hair why you said yes to this conversation. Your 60 seconds starts now. Go. That was 60 seconds. That was 60 seconds. Longer hair, tell the other person. That was 60 seconds. That was 60 seconds. Shh. So listen, with the buzz that was in the room, I actually want to hear a little bit about what happened in those conversations. So here's the thing. I spoke about connecting when I told you about why the Women's Day started. So ever since 1909, the issues have progressed. So today, our conversations about actually equality, about breaking the bias, about making sure that we've got more seats at the table. So I would like to hear, what interesting thing did you hear from your partner? And I think Tanya and Takwin are in the crowd with a roving mic. So if you can share one or two things, we'll maybe take two contributions, one or two things of what intrigued you about why your partner said yes to this conversation. Yes, there's a hand. There's a mic.
Good morning, wonderful women, and welcome also to all of you. And so nice to be surrounded by all of you today. I'm Kimberly Wenzel-Ricketts. And what intrigued me about my partners, firstly, we chose one another because I was like, there's another person wearing yellow. And she's here. She's like, I'm here.
Yes.
And we said we already broke the rules. So I think that's also breaking the bias. There's 3 of us in our group, not 2.
Okay.
And what was interesting is that Julia actually comes from Deloitte, and I used to work for Deloitte. And then Marvelous shared the fact that she's grateful, and both of them are grateful to be here to network, to meet other women, and to be surrounded by other strong women as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm also a former Deloitian. Any others? One more? Would love to hear from one person. I see there's a hand at the back.
So I'm speaking to the wonderful Pam, who, by the way, styled Fortune today.
Thank you.
And she was saying how she wants to sort of understand how to navigate the spaces in corporate as a woman, and to break the molds that are there, and to obviously work her magic as a woman in the corporate space.
Wonderful, thank you. I love the work her magic. So I hope that today we do leave with those nuggets around how we work our magic. So no pressures to this table, but we are looking forward to these nuggets. Wonderful. So I always say that your voice you have not arrived until your voice has been heard. So now you have formally arrived. You can take your seat, and then I'll introduce you to our first speaker. Yes. So I also want to share with you that all the speakers who are going to be on stage today, I have a special connection with. And I will share with you their professional accomplishments, but I think it's also important for me to share with you how I'm connected to these women. So I first met CJ, who you've probably seen on our collateral as Cheryl Jane in 2016 when we were doing our executive MBA. Not only had she started an EMBA, but she was also pregnant with her second child, and also a partner and a strategic growth markets leader at EY. After she delivered, she took on a role as the CFO at Adcock during a tumultuous time, which required her to restructure the finance team and tighten their reporting and make some tough decisions, a role which moved into an interim CEO role. She took a break after that and then joined Ascendus Health, where she is the CFO and sits on the board of a few of the group's subsidiaries. I asked her to come and speak today because her EMBA dissertation has some great insights that we can take back to our own organizations. The title of her thesis is Breaking the Second Glass Ceiling, exploring the career progression of women from senior leadership roles to C-suite roles. And really her concern and her curiosity was what happens to all the women, because they do enter the workplace, but then what happens to them when they get to the C-suite roles? And I think when I did the radio interview a few weeks ago, I spoke to Reflue and I said, in 2016, when she was doing her thesis, there were 3 female CEOs on the JSE Top 40. And today we are in 2022. 6 years later, there are 4. That doesn't speak well of our progress. So I'm really excited to hear the insights that Cheryl Jane is going to be sharing with us this morning. And without further ado, Cheryl, which I've never called a CJ.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. After that introduction, I feel a bit intimidated, I'll be honest. I feel like you're setting me up for failure. Talking me up. But, it's such an honor and privilege to be here today. Thank you, Luminary, for setting this up. When Fortune phoned me a couple of months ago and said, I'd like you to be a speaker, I kind of brushed it off because I just thought, what can I add to the conversation? Being here today, I'm grateful that I said yes. So thank you, and I'm honored and humbled to be in your presence. I just need to figure out how the technology works. Do I just press? Okay, perfect. All right. So, without further ado, as I've indicated, it's a real honor and privilege to be talking to you this morning. And I hope that you each walk away with some food for thought, an added perspective that you may or may not agree with, but that adds depth to the lens through which you see this problem with. Because unfortunately, the issues of gender diversity, particularly in the workplace, are not binary. And so I trust that we each take the time this morning to invite multiple perspectives. And I'm certainly looking forward to engaging with you and the other speakers during the course of the morning. As Fortune explained, in 2017, I finalized my thesis. And the topic of the thesis was really exploring the lack of women in C-suite roles in South Africa's largest corporates. My curiosity stemmed from the fact that although organizations were becoming more gender-friendly, and I was certainly seeing more women in middle and senior management roles in organizations, I was not seeing enough women at the decision-making table. I conducted a number of interviews as part of my thesis. I spoke to women who had made it into these roles, and I also used my own transition from being a partner at EY into the CFO role that Fortune spoke about, and referenced some of my own learnings and experiences. And so what I speak to you today about is a bit of what I found on that journey, and a little bit of my own felt experience over time. As a girl growing up, I was told that I could be and do anything I wanted to be. I had a very fearless mother. But one of the things my mom used to caution me about all the time is that the world puts you into a box. And the world decides the size of the box and the type of box that they put you into. And some people will have large boxes that allow you to flourish and to blossom. And some will have small boxes that confine and restrict you. And you'll get to understand the size of box you've been put into, because as you outgrow it, you can see the discomfort in the other party. And they'll either step aside and accommodate your growth, or they'll try and restrict you. But that's fine. It probably means that their season in your life has passed. And it's not about their box, but about the box that you put yourself into. So today I want to use this analogy of the box in talking about some of the factors that impact women and the progression of women into particularly executive leadership roles. The box that I'll speak to has 4 sides. And please note, these are not the only factors. I've really, like I said to Fortune, I've had to edit and edit and edit. This talk is a version of a talk that I do, which is normally part of an hour-long conversation. So I've tried to edit it down to 20 minutes. But the 4 elements of the box are the natural order, opting out, the perception of women as leaders, and a willingness by those who have the power to open the door. Just starting with the natural order. In the book Sapiens, the author outlines how our societal reality is a mutual construct that is cemented by what he calls habitualization. Now, habitualization is when we frequently repeat an action and it becomes cast into a pattern, and over time, this forms a general store of knowledge. This store of knowledge is institutionalized by society to the extent that future generations experience this type of knowledge as objective socialization. It's the way things are. It's the way we've always done things. It's our tradition. We've all heard those things. There are many examples of this. And there are certainly many examples of lost socialization. And one day when we have time, we must talk about the lost matriarchal societies, particularly in the African communities. Now, when you think about this and you think about it in the corporate world, men have dominated the organizational and political leadership domain for so long that so-called leadership characteristics are usually based on masculine attributes. And this is exacerbated by the low number of women in these roles who are really not enough to change the dominant stereotype and the assumption that leadership is gender situated and not personality situated. My own reflection is that this construct reflects in this cognitive challenge of seeing women as leaders in the organization. So if I use an example, if I walked into this room and I walked in with a male colleague who happened to be tall, maybe blonde, most people would assume that he's the boss and I'm not. The reality is there's no narrative for women as leaders. The mental model does not exist for women as leaders. And this makes it very difficult to navigate and allow mental associations to be made of women in different leadership roles. Because again, there's no one size fits all. Different leadership roles that are outside of their known habitualized role of being carers of the family and home. And this is perpetuated by the fact that women have been anonymized so much that no one even notices when our voice is not sought or heard. Human identity is subconsciously aligned with male, and often white male, identity. Give some thought to concepts that are considered gender neutral, and ask yourself whether they genuinely equalize the playing field for both men and women. As an example, until fairly recently, when you typed in words like doctor, engineer, CEO into your iPhone, it would automatically bring up the male emoji. Fortunately, Apple has rectified this. Caroline Criado Perez wrote this book called Invisible Women about the absence of female-specific data and how that absence makes it impossible to design a world that works for women. She argues that the continued definition of women predominantly by their relationship to men allows men to view women as a subtype of men rather than as autonomous human beings with their own dreams, goals, hopes, and specific needs. She talks in her book about the inherent disadvantage to women due to the fact that working culture is based on the ideological belief that male needs are universal. Her book highlights the woman-sized gap that has been created by society, and that's transitioned into our workplaces. As an example, why are men referred to as Mr.? And yet on each form that I fill out as a woman, someone somewhere needs to know my age and marital status by putting me in a box of, am I a Miss, a Ms., or a Mrs.? Who does that serve? So I pose the question, how natural is this natural order? When in essence, we have lost out on the collective insight and input into our workplaces of approximately half our population. The next part of the box is this concept of opting out. And this I feel very strongly about because over my career, particularly at EY, I saw so many women doing this. How many women opt out when in fact they should be leaning in? In my late 20s, I was part of a group of young Christian women that were exploring how best to become fit biblical wives. And one of the topics for discussion was the type of career you chose. And the premise was that in order to become a fit biblical wife, one needed to make sure that their career did not take up too much time, so that when you become a mother, you would have time for your children. and that you would enable your husband to take his rightful role as the head of the home. My challenge and my real dilemma was that I actually really loved my job. I was at the brink of making partner, and I was really struggling with this concept of a God who would open these doors for me and give me this gift, but at the same time want me to make myself smaller so that someone's son would feel more comfortable. Needless to say, I'm still single. And at least I'm unmarried. But with the women that I interviewed during my thesis, there were 3 very distinct characteristics that all of them had. One was self-agency. The second was a willingness to take a risk. And the third was a strong sense of self-belief. It also translated into the women making intentional social and sometimes unconventional decisions that enabled them to grow in their careers. The presence of strong, understanding support structures is an important enabler for women's success. There's no doubt about that. This includes family, a husband or partner who understands their drive and ambition and fully supports it. Unfortunately, the division of childcare and housework is still hugely lopsided towards women. Workplace policies have not made any significant strides to change the dynamic. And to be honest, it's very difficult to do so. But as an example, the average workplace allows a woman to take 3 to 4 months paid maternity leave, but does not afford her partner the same opportunity. Imagine a world where you could take 3 to 4 months maternity leave, pass the baton on to your partner, they take 3 to 4 months, you go back to work, but with more peace of mind as a mother, knowing that at home there's someone who loves and cares for your child. This aligns with the advice of Sheryl Sandberg, who calls on women to make their partners equal participants in aspects of child rearing and housekeeping. Having said that, the assumption that households are made up of heterosexual married couples is becoming increasingly outdated. I am an example of that. I'm a single mother by choice who decided to make her life difficult by having an 18-month-old pregnant and doing her EMBA. I did not know any better, to be honest. I don't have the option of a partner to co-parent with me. And Sheryl Sandberg admitted her oversight years later in her second book, when her husband unfortunately passed away. And this is a quote from that book where she says, "Before, I did not quite get it. I did not really get how hard it is to succeed at work when you're overwhelmed at home." This factor cannot be ignored in a country where more than 40% of women with children are single mothers. I still have disconcerting conversations with male senior executives that I work with. Over December, we had to work, actually I only had Christmas Day off. We worked literally every day in December. And the team that I was working with on these transactions comprises mainly young men in their early to mid-30s. Most of our kids are about the same age, very young kids. But each check-in that we had, one of our senior male executives would ask, "CJ, how are your children doing with this? I mean, they must be finding it really hard that mommy is working in December, over the Christmas holidays even." To the point where one of the guys asked, "What of us and our children? Is the assumption that we have wives at home looking after the kids?" And actually that assumption was actually a fallacy, because the one guy we used to tease, because each call, one, he'd forget to mute, and his kids would be in the background screaming. His wife's a doctor and she was always on call. But it's interesting, no one ever said, "Joe, how are your kids?" And I always knew that if my kids had been the ones screaming and crying in the background, that I'd have immediately been discounted as not being able to contribute. This is just an illustration of the strong patriarchy that underpins the views of some men who are in decision-making roles. It's a chicken and egg dilemma. Self-agency allows one to make intentional decisions that may differ from societal norms, but one needs to have the material means and be self-sufficient to do so. Unfortunately, too many women opt out, either by making themselves smaller or exiting potentially fulfilling careers before they have a chance to make an impact. In 1929, Victoria Woolf wrote an account of the challenges faced by female authors of her time in her book, A Room of One's Own. She highlights the tension brought about by women being the child bearers and the need for women to be financially independent. If any of you is like an old literature nerd and likes reading these old books, this is a very interesting one. But I'll quote from a portion of the book. "Making a fortune and bearing 13 children, no human could stand it. Consider the facts. First, there are 9 months before the baby is born. Then the baby is born. Then there are 3 or 4 months spent in feeding the baby. After the baby is fed, there are certainly 5 years spent in playing with this baby. You cannot, it seems, let children run around the streets. People who've seen them running around in Russia say the sight is not a pleasant one. People say, too, that human nature takes its shape in the years between 1 and 5. Therefore, if Mrs. Seton and her like had gone into business at the age of 15, there would have been, and here is the snag in the argument, no Mary. What, I asked, did Mary think of that?" Woolf eloquently summarizes the dilemma that still exists today. Can a woman who is a mother engage in a successful career and still provide the caregiving and nurturing her children require? Can a man provide that in the woman's place? Or are we so habitualized that we do not believe this to be the case? Is the primary role of a woman that of childbearing? And if she does not have any children, if there are no Marys that she gives birth to, has she failed society? I don't have answers to these questions. However, we cannot ignore the long-held subconscious association of what we believe the role of a woman is on how we view female leaders. What I do know is that the more women that opt out in various ways, the less women there are with a room of their own. And this the means to make the choices that will enable them to grow in their careers. And the harder it becomes to break this vicious cycle. The next element of the box is this perception of women as leaders. Now, the psychology of prejudice towards female leaders stems from these instant gender categorizations that associate women with communal qualities and men with qualities that imply authority and agency. The advantage of this characterization to men is that the starting assumption is that they can lead. Of course he's a leader. So once a man is viewed as a leader, the qualities associated with leadership are further ascribed to him, giving him an additional edge in the competition for leadership roles. No such bolstering exists for women. It's further worsened by the concept of the double bind. A double bind is a behavioral norm that creates a situation where a person cannot win no matter what they do. So when a woman displays characteristics that are viewed as gender typical, she experiences the femininity, competency double bind because, she's not tough enough. She's not going to be able to manage that team. She's not loud enough. She's not firm enough. But when she displays characteristics that are seen as male, she's then labeled as, she's too bossy, not likable. She gets words such as B associated with her. If that same woman happens to not be married or not have children, then she experiences the further prejudice of having her single status ascribed as having resulted from her leadership qualities. In fact, the existence of toughness and femininity in one personality are still a difficult concept for corporate to reconcile and digest. I love this quote from Chimamanda, I love Chimamanda in general. Teach her that if you criticize X in women, but do not criticize X in men, then you do not have a problem with X. You have a problem with women. For X, please insert words like anger, ambition, loudness, stubbornness, coldness, ruthlessness. Many entrenched organizational structures and work practices were designed to fit men's lives and situations at a time when women made up only a small portion of the workforce. And this brings me to my last point: the willingness by those with the power to actually make a change. I believe it is the single most significant factor in progressing women into senior leadership roles. A factor that is linked to the low number of women in executive leadership roles is the way recruitment takes place at that level. It's strongly sponsored by the board of directors and driven mostly by the CEO. Therefore, you need this group of people to be intentional about adding a critical mass of gender diversity to the decision-making table, particularly in executive management roles and not just in non-executive director roles. The perceived lack of availability of a pipeline of competent and experienced women to fill executive leadership roles is often used as an excuse to keep promoting men at a disproportionate rate. One of the things I always say to organizations is, think about the career path of a CEO. Think about what that would take. Take that, translate it to high potential women in your organization. You'll have that pipeline. My strongly held view is that organizations are not giving women enough strategic and tough assignments that prepare them for executive leadership roles. And I mean it, tough assignments, because executive leadership is not easy. My own experience is that women tend to be given softer opportunities that do not stretch and develop them. Now, I've got 2 kids, 5 and 7. I love them with all my heart and soul. The only reason I'm comfortable leaving them at home to go and work and lean into my work is because I'm feeling intellectually stimulated, I'm feeling like I'm making a real contribution to the organization, and I'm making a real contribution to the organization's bottom line. Once I start feeling like I'm being given softer roles, I tend to check out. You see, understanding the real reasons why women choose to stay within an organization or leave is important in strengthening the pipeline of female talent. It certainly is not a one-size-fits-all, but when you combine executive intentionality with a high-potential woman and challenging strategic developmental experiences, that woman's psychological contract with the organization is strengthened. In conclusion, there is a belonging problem for women in the corporate world. Concerns with diversity, equity, and genuine representativity are very topical at the moment as we see movements like Black Lives Matter growing exponentially. In recent years, Hollywood came under attack, and in response, various people have come up with a number of tests for representation in film that I thought would be quite fun to close out with. There are 3 key ones that they use. One is the Bechdel test, the second one is the Vita-Russo test, and the third one is the Duvernay test. And so I came up with my CJ test to see if, as organizations, we've got true representativity at a gender level. First of all, there must be at least 2 women in the executive team. Secondly, the women must have decision-making authority. Thirdly, there must be at least 2 women in a role other than HR or corporate affairs. These are extremely important roles, do not get me wrong, but they have become the default placeholders for women in the executive team. All projects of significant commercial or strategic importance must include at least 2 women whose roles are critical to the achievement of the outcome. I think that's a good starting point, don't you? Thank you.
So, CJ, thank you very much. But what I would like to do is ask you to stand here for a little bit and check if there are people who would like to ask any questions. I certainly heard the 4 boxes that you spoke about, the natural order, the opting out, which is what we are seeing often, women as leaders, and the willingness by those with the power to make a change, which obviously speaks to them making more conscious decisions around building a female talent pool that they can then progress into executive leadership roles. So I'd like to ask, any questions, comments, insights from the group before I let CJ go? Is there a question? And I see Takwin is ready with the mic. So I see Niven's hand is up. Niven?
Yeah, CJ, I thought what you said was fantastic. I'm working on my slides as you speak. I'm going to put that in as well. And then I'm going to emphasize that. And I really, when you mentioned Invisible Women, I was like, hallelujah. For those of you who haven't read it, I try to read the FT McKinsey Business Book of the Year Award shortlist and long list every year. And this won the FT McKinsey Business Book of the Year Award 2 years ago. It is the most astonishing book. Eventually, friends of mine, when I was telling them about it, said, Niv, you've got to calm down when you tell us some of this stuff. It really is astonishing in terms of the data bias. And to add to your example, essentially, one of the things that they talk about is how in machine learning and algorithms, when you have no idea of the unconscious bias of the people who have programmed those algorithms, which the machine then learns from, it's not like normal bias where you can have a workshop and try to get to grips with it. It's now in the system. So I was reading this and thinking, wow, this is very interesting. And then blow me down, about 2 weeks after I'd read that part of the book, because I had to take it in stages, I was getting so vuss. After I'd read that part of the book, I can't remember, but I was doing a Google image search for schoolgirl, for whatever reason I needed it. And as I put in schoolgirl on Google Images, I thought, good grief, this is what they're talking about. Because try it. It'd be interesting to see what your search history does, because of course it's all personalized. But I put in schoolgirl, and there were probably 20 images on the screen, 18 of which were grown women in little mini skirts and suspenders, 2 of which were little girls going to school. And I thought, hold on a second, and I tried schoolboy. Of course, it was completely reversed. So 18 out of the pictures were little boys going to school. Maybe one, some dodgy fireman with a bare chest and a schoolboy cap. But in the most seemingly innocuous way, and had I not read that book, I wouldn't have been as primed. I would have just thought, oh, well, strange aberration. It's not an aberration. It's becoming more endemic. So thank you. I thought your talk was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That book is standard reading. And just, sorry, not to harp on about this, but because you start seeing it once you've gone through this book. I mean, she gives an example of the bathrooms. Again, an example of how the world was designed by men, not for women. And you know how at every break, men go through the bathroom quickly, women go through at a lot. We're all standing in queues and we think it's normal. And it's because the people who designed the bathrooms didn't stop and say, well, it takes women longer to use the bathroom. Women need more cubicles. They're going to need more space. They're going to need more mirrors. No one's thinking about that. So if, again, in changing the conversation, we've got to say, but how is it that the world's been designed? And then if we were to start afresh on a clean slate, how would we design it for women?
Thank you. Thank you, CJ. There's one more question. And while Takwin is taking the mic, I also want to talk about the comment that you made around actually what we find with women in the workplace is that there's an issue of belonging. And I see that you quoted the 2020 human capital trends. And actually what we said is for belonging to happen, there has to be 3 things in place: comfort, connection, and contribution. And what that means is that people need to feel that they are comfortable to bring their whole selves to an environment, because that way they'll be able to connect authentically with the people that they work with. And when that happens, then they're able to make meaningful contribution to work outcomes. But what precedes the comfort is creating psychological safety. So I found that really interesting. But I see that there's one more question, and then we will move on to Zimbini.
Morning, everyone. I'm
Morning.
Patricia Andrews from Deloitte. I recently joined Deloitte, and I just want to say thank you so much for that last insight that you gave me. The one specific thing that I feel like, I come to these women conferences because I feel like inspired, I have the motivation to move on. And I've been doing this for like my last, 15 years of becoming, working to where I am. But the one thing that specifically touched me, like the last 3 months, is moving out of an organization where men felt like they need to shelter you. You're the one that do the work underneath them. If they go on holidays, you'll be there to do the work. But when you want to make those strategic decisions, you want to take those leadership ideas and you want to move on, then you're often blocked for that way. And I never felt like, I felt like it was a personal feeling where you felt that way, and that's why you're moving on to new adventures where you're actually going to be seen. But you actually put it right spot on, that it's actually something that someone else is also feeling that way, where you said that organizations aren't giving women enough strategic and tough assignments that prepare them for executive leadership. That has really, it's something I've always felt. So you may feel, that you're coming here, it's something personal to you, but it's actually something that's so, familiar with everyone else. It's feeling the same way. So that, personally, I've taken that step. I've taken that leadership role where I can be seen. And that is also why Deloitte is that's got that values of inclusivity and equality, where I've experienced, you don't have, you're part of the directors, but you're actually not part. You're just there to, as a token. They say you're not a token, but in the end of the day, when you walk out there, you see, okay, you actually were a token. So thank you so much for putting that spot on for that. It adds value, and I'm sure it will add value to you guys. You may not feel it this way now, but in the end, somewhere along the line, you'll feel like it actually contributed to the way and shape you where you are in the end. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So on behalf of Luminary, courtesy of Estee Lauder, this is our thank you gift. Thank you. Thank you. So for our next speaker, I almost feel like I need a podium to tell the story. So I met Zimbini in 2015, and I was facilitating a workshop for TFG, Center Debbie. I was facilitating a workshop for TFG Jewelry. And she walked in, we were sitting in a circle doing our check-in. But then there happened to be an empty seat next to me. And my co-facilitator is the one who was doing the check-in. So I was also just sitting like everyone else. So she walked in and then she came and she sat next to me. We did the check-in, we finished. And then she said, listen. And so anyway, the facilitator says, you can now go back to your seats. We're going to start the workshop. And then she said, listen, I'm sitting next to you. And then I said, well, I would really love to sit next to you. It's just that I don't have a seat. I'm actually facilitating. And then she said, no, never mind. But anyway, after today, we have to meet and talk about something. Whenever, I don't know, but we have to meet and talk about something, and the rest is history. But not only that, I will never forget a time where we had a real disagreement because we had a difference in perspectives. And I was in Joburg, she was here, we spoke on the phone, we just somehow could not see the same perspective. And she said, my friend, let's talk when you're back. I went to meet with her, she sat across me, and she said, you know, friend, the reason why I felt really strongly about that disagreement is that for the first time, I felt like you were sitting across the table from me, not next to me. We always argue, and I always feel like you are sitting this side of the table, but that day, I felt like you were sitting across from the table. And if that is not vulnerability, is not courage, is not authenticity, I don't know what is. But the reason why I share all these stories about women is that I am saying to you, they are demonstrative of the fact that as women, we can collectively create a new narrative about being together as women. So not only that, she is a very seasoned marketing executive in fast-moving consumer goods and retail. Her career spans through Procter & Gamble, Tiger Brands, the Foschini Group, Philip Morris, and today she's wearing the Dream, which is the clothing line that she started last year in October 2021, Zimbini 1982. May I ask you to welcome Zimbini Peffer to the stage.
Let me have that mic. Good morning, everyone. Fortune, thank you for that introduction. My eyes welled up when she talked about the discussion that we had across from each other. I felt that she was across from me. So Fortune invited me to be a speaker today, and the conversation went like this. Friend, I am hosting the IW International Women's Day, IWD, in March, and I'd very much like you to be a part of it. And I said, friend, I'm there. I'm going to buy a ticket. I'm going to be seated. I'm going to be supporting. If you need me to be signing people in, I'm going to sign people in. Just let me know what you need me to do, and I'm there. She says to me, friend, I'd like for you to be a speaker. Yeah. I was like, but friend, what would I have to share with the room filled with, I'm imagining, amazing women. And I see a room filled with amazing women. Just want to say everybody looks stunning today. I love the outfits. I love the colors. Yeah, it's just, so for me, I'm humbled truly to be here. And I kind of sit and I stand here actually with that intense feeling of, am I going to do justice to this honor that you've extended to me? Maybe you can help me, Turkin, and you can go through the slides for me. Is that all right? Okay. So I've chosen to focus on duality of the bias. And I think for me, and my name Zimbini actually means the duality of nature. Literally, it means there are two. And in my case, I am one of two daughters at home, and I'm the last born. Obviously, had to be second so that there are two. And so I always try, and I'm always kind of inspired quite naturally to start thinking or try and look at things from either side of them or from two different perspectives. And maybe my name was truly the gift that has allowed me to look at life in this way, to approach challenges, to even approach people as well with this insight. So I'm hoping that today, what I call a cautionary tale, my story, is going to help, is going to support you on your own individual journeys towards connecting with your most authentic self. Next one. So this is my life. Okay, in images. I think it's impressive, ladies. It's impressive. Okay? It's impressive. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you all clapped. Okay, so I've got an almost 20-year career in the marketing space. Interesting enough, I didn't study marketing. I joined an organization at the top, Procter & Gamble, and they believed that despite my financial accounting background, I would do well in marketing. I think they were right. Some 20 years later. As you flow through the picture, I mean, the center is my life. That's my family. I've got a cute husband up there. I know, so I think it's cute. I've got two amazing kids. They drive me crazy, but I love them with everything that I have in my heart. So I feel truly blessed to have a very supportive husband, one boy and one girl that really helps me understand the journey of males and females and seeing how their lives are unfolding and how their perspectives are also different. Having grown in the same home, having the same parents, and having had very many of the same experiences, but what they end up or how they are ending up showing up in this world. So again, very thankful and very grateful. So Fortune mentioned Zimbini 1982. Can you guys tell I'm really excited about Zimbini 1982? At the end of March, it's going to be 6 months, so such a new journey for me. And I don't have a fashion background. I think everyone can capture that or is concluded that, but I've always loved fashions. I love dressing up. I love noticing how people are dressed up. I believe that a lot of our personalities, our emotions, our experiences really factor into how we look. And this is across men and women truly, but I think significantly more with us as women. We wear the suits, we wear the dresses, we wear the shorts. So we have an expansive range of items that we can choose from to really express ourselves and show up in the world. So with that in mind, I thought if I were to launch a business, what would I do or where would I look to launch that business, in what industry? And I chose fashion. It's a passion project for me. I'm really enjoying it. And you know, I must be honest, when Fortune said it's a women's breakfast, I was like, customer profile, hello. So I know that this evening, when I actually go and check my performance on my website, it's going to say to me, there were 44 new visitors on your website. So today I am actually wearing the dream, as Fortune has called it. And we call it the dream because that's how we get started on things. We dream them and then we make them happen. And for me, it's not about the size of my business at this point. It's truly about what this business has meant for me and what it is as an example to my daughter, that when you have an idea, if you have something that you want to do in the world, don't think about all the reasons why you can't do something. Just do it. And the outcome will always surprise you. And the website's beautiful, so you're going to enjoy it for sure. I mean, I am a marketer, so it's gorgeous. And the clothes too. And I think I've talked about my varsity time. So at the top is a lighthouse, an image of where I grew up in Potchefstroom. I think truly the benefit of growing up in a small town is a lot of things that you only see as an adult in bigger cities. You don't really notice them. So my mom ran a business. She drove vans and she drove trucks. She had other women friends that did the same, that ran their own businesses. And it just seemed like there's a lot of natural spaces where women were showing up. So for me, I never really felt that there was any disadvantage to me being a woman. And so I generally, and I think I'm mostly experienced by both men and women, as Zimbini, because that's just who I am. So that for me, I think I'm very thankful for the experience or the opportunity of being able to grow up in a small city or small town, get an opportunity to be exposed to a bigger city like Cape Town quite young in my life, joining amazing organizations where I really felt that I had an opportunity to express myself and show up in those organizations, and family, yes, total blessing, and then currently just very excited about Zimbini 1982. Oh, that's my world. Everyone with me? Excellent. So go on to the next slide. So one of the things that my kids have really taught me is about simplifying things. So sometimes we can sit in our boardrooms or we can sit in our offices and we can sit in the corporate environment and even amongst our friends. And we tend to use complicated, suppose, language. We tend to express things in a way that adult to adult conversation was actually quite understood and it's kind of clear. But what Max and Zoe have really taught me is answer hard questions, mummy, simply, because I just don't understand what you're saying. There's nothing harder than a 5-year-old saying to you, looking at you in your eyes with desperation to understand what it is that you're trying to say and saying, mummy, what are you trying to say? Yeah, you kind of have to take a moment back and say, okay, fine, am I overcomplicating this idea, or do I just need to simply put it the way that I would have naturally understood it as a child? So when I thought about bias and what bias means, it really comes down to fairness. Like, nobody understands fairness and unfairness like our kids do. You're sitting in a classroom, you're 7 to about age 12 or so, and you notice that the teacher asks the same kids questions and gives them an opportunity to speak more often than they give you an opportunity to speak. When my kids come home and they've had this type of experience, they say, Mommy, it's just so unfair. And in those moments, I don't engage or connect with them to say, baby, let's talk to the teacher. We need to solve this. I need you to pick up your hand. You need to make sure that teacher sees that you were there. Sit up with your shoulders straight. And I kind of always figured to say, I know, baby, it is totally unfair. And kind of just sit in the pain and the hurt of the unfairness in that moment. And I find that within a 15, 20-minute space, their energy comes back up again. They get up in the next morning and they're excited about going to school. And they simply show up as the really happy, excited, enthused young people that they are. So in finding or looking for this definition, it's favoritism, or finding or seeing that somebody is favoring someone over you. And the word that I use with my kids, or the words that my children use, is around fairness. And the question that I ask is, when did we stop acknowledging or just simply saying out loud, whether to others or even to ourselves, that was unfair? Just taking a moment to acknowledge that, taking a moment to acknowledge the pain that causes in each of us. Because unfairness makes us feel something. And we can't necessarily just put that away or forget it. And when we do, you can go on to the next slide. The pain that we feel is a not enough feeling, a not enough pain. What we feel is a sense of not belonging, not being with the chosen people, not being a chosen person. And I put up there Brene Brown's quote, which I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. But I think for me, what this pain does is it forces you, or let's say when not acknowledged, what this pain does, or what you do with this pain, is you start shutting down the smaller pieces in you that are hurt by this pain. And I hope the language connects and links with you guys. And each time you shut down a little piece of you, and then another little piece. So they said, I'm too loud. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to show them. I'm going to speak up. So you're not speaking up because you simply want to speak up. You have idea that you want to share. You start doing it from a position of proving, of defending, and that immediately just puts you on the back foot. But when you do that, you are trying to close a part of you and represent something else out in the world. And as you continuously shut down another part of you and another part of you, your body and your mind, unfortunately, begins to approach a point of shutting down. Maybe this is where I get a little closer to my story that I'd like to share with you. Is in about 2017, 2018, I had been, at the time, had been in the organization for about 2 years, and it was all new to me. I'd moved from Johannesburg, I was now in Cape Town, and I was beginning to, well, not beginning, I had started learning about a new industry. I was learning about or getting experience in a new town. I was meeting really amazing people and doing some fantastic projects. You know, they were totally exciting. And when you look at all of it from the outside, I was thriving. It was absolutely amazing. But in my career up until that time, from having started at Procter & Gamble, having been a mom, having been a wife, having faced unfairness in many varied experiences, I was carrying with me a lot of pain. And what that pain, as I've described it, begins to shut down little parts of you. I think there are women in the world or people in the world, I'd say, that are able to push through that pain. And I earlier on referred to this concept of resilience. And truly, when people talk about resilience, is you can handle the pain, you can take it, and you can push through. But there are instances, and there's some of us, where that pain truly overcomes us. And so this is why I talk about a cautionary tale. I don't believe that burnout is in the future of every single person, but anything close to it, anything that resembles it, is something that I wish for no one. And so I burnt out. And when I say burnt out, like I have this image of myself like on the ground with smoke coming out of me, right? And actually from an emotional feeling standpoint, that's exactly what it feels like. You feel scorched inside and your body simply says, we are not moving forward until you look after us from an internal emotional standpoint. So when your body speaks to you, when that inner voice says, take time for yourself, it says reboot, it says listen, face the pain, it says, recover, nourish yourself, listen to that voice, because all that happens is the need just begins to expand and expand more and more. So my experience of having been burnt out is actually focused me, or it's pushed me towards a new journey of kindness to myself. And I found that being kinder to myself is not only about being nice to myself. People think about kindness as just being nice, but truly seeing myself, seeing my experience and acknowledging how I'm feeling in any given moment. And if I don't have time in that moment to listen, I remember that I need to think about this later. So really prioritizing how you feel. And I think with my kids, again, I refer to them a lot because things are very simple and very honest when it comes to young people, is that for them, kindness is looking at them in their eyes and focusing on what they're trying to say or what it is that they're saying. Kindness is showing up to a game that they've asked you that they'd really like you to be at. Kindness is putting aside your laptop and listening to something or doing something with them that they'd very much like to do. I'm no artist, but I've got a daughter that wants to paint. She paints everything, including the house. And I'm not interested in painting, but when she says, Mommy, I'd really like to paint with you today, I put things aside and I just do that. And so I think really, like I said, it's really been about kindness and continuously focusing on healing. Because in life, there are a myriad of things that hurt us. There's a myriad of things that shut down a piece of us. But how much time are we actually devoting to healing ourselves, to nourishing ourselves, and preparing ourselves for the next thing that comes up in life? Next one. So I think this journey of kindness and healing has led me on a journey that I've been on for some time, I believe, and we've discussed it and talked about it very often, Fortune. I don't believe that authenticity is a destination, something that you arrive at, but truly just the journey that you're continuously on. I continue to be on that journey, and some of the things that have kind of helped me as landmarks that I want to, or I tend to focus on, is really this idea of listening to the inner voice. It can be very silent at times. Sometimes it's not saying anything to you. Sometimes it's just feeling a certain way. I think I've spoken to this point already. Knowing your values, I've spoken to one of the values that I hold very close and dear to me, which is kindness. And it's actually quite interesting that whilst I've exercised or I've shown kindness to many people in my life, people I've worked with, my family, people who are close to me, and even people that I've just met, I consider myself a kind person. And all of this external expression of kindness, for one or other reason, I never really turned it on myself. So what are the values that you hold dear and that are important to you that you continue to express externally, but you don't see them truly coming to life inside you and for you? So I think they're another thing to consider. Speaking up. So and I don't know if I'm alone on this one, but if I am, that's okay. I still think it's a worthy story to share or a worthy insight to share. When I have to speak publicly or enter into a difficult conversation about fairness, a conversation about hurt, anything that basically brings up some level of nervousness, some level of feeling emotional. My eyes well up, my voice begins to shake, and when I know that this feeling is coming, I have this burning urge to say, okay, maybe it's better to just not talk about it right now. Maybe it's better not to do the speech, not to talk. I think I thought maybe about 10 times about phoning Fortune and saying to her, babe, maybe I don't do this, maybe find somebody else. So I come up with lots of reasons and I try to avoid getting into that space. But the one thing that I have acknowledged and I've seen time and time again is going into these conversations with all the nerves, getting into a speaking engagement, getting into a tough conversation where you're expressing how something has hurt you, expressing how something has not met your expectations. Go in it nervous, but go in. Have the conversation with your eyes welled up with tears, with your heart beating in your chest. Go in, enter as that, acknowledge that the pain is there, but enter anyway. Get into the conversation anyway, and don't allow that internal fear to actually stop you from speaking out. And when you speak out, we imagine that we're speaking out for the people around us so that our message is heard out there. But the crazy thing is when you speak up, you're actually doing it for yourself. The internal turmoil that you sit with by not expressing your view, by not expressing the pain, is the thing that chips away at you over time, and you begin to become somebody, both externally and internally, that you were never designed to be. So how far do we get sort of off track from the person that we are because of the many things that we didn't say, or we felt we couldn't say them, or we didn't say them the way we actually believed or thought they actually were. And the very last one is facing the pain. I think when we talk about sort of things that hurt us, so I alluded to fairness and how that actually makes us feel. One of the things that we all generally do is it's just kind of easier to kind of just step away from it, have a muffin. My favorite is a fresh cream caramel cake. That's one of mine. I also quite love the Woolies vegetarian roti. Oh, that just feels like home. It's like, so there are certain things that I know that I do that just kind of take the edge off a little bit. And we all have that thing that takes off the edge just a bit. But take the edge off, give yourself that space, but then step back or step into the feeling that you had. Don't be afraid. Trust me, it's not going to kill you. If anything, it's going to nourish and it's going to enrich your experience of who you are and what your needs are. I say a lot, and I think it's my signal to say, change the slide. So the last one that I'll kind of talk to is showing up, and I think it really connects with what I'd shared previously, or just like right now, is showing up, right? And showing up, and I kind of remember a video that I watched, a TED Talk that I watched, and the lady was referring or talking about showing up, and truly, when we show up, things start to happen. If you don't show up, like nothing happens, right? So I showed up today and I'm doing the talk. Show up for yourself and speak up. Show up for yourself and take the time to care for yourself. Showing up truly is 90% of the job that gets done. So don't simmer away, or don't get eaten away to sort of a non-presence. Show up to whatever the challenge is. Show up to, like I've spoken about it, show up to the pain, show up to the experience, show up to an opportunity. Just simply show up. Don't take the step back and kind of step into the light or step into the moment. So this is one of my favorite poems, and I really encourage you, if you've read it before, you've heard it before, go back and read it again. It's like one of the things for me, I read at least every 2 to 3 months. I just kind of get back in and I read it again. I truly find it really heart-opening, and it really challenges me and pushes me to to truly see myself, to see my wholeness, to see how amazing I am. And no matter how many times people will tell you that you're incredible, or you're really good at something, or you're really funny, or whatever the compliment that comes externally, trust me, you're not going to believe it. And I know that we don't believe it unless we believe it. And for me, this is such an interesting and insightful thing. It's kind of really simple, and I want to share a little story with you. I grew up being told that I've got great legs. Okay? And it was said to me a number of times, like over and over again. And as I grew up and I started seeing what legs look like out there, you know, what I look like in a pair of shorts, what I look like in skirts, I was like, girl, you got some nice legs. Nah? And I started believing that I got nice legs. And I'll tell you for free today, if anybody were ever to attempt to say to me, you don't have nice legs, I'm just like, whatever, right? But for one or other reason, I haven't been able, or I'm not able to continuously do that with other parts of me. And I use my legs, this is a very simple example. But if somebody says to me, you know, you should speak in a certain way, or you need to show up in a certain way, or that you're not smart enough, or that was not a really clever thing to say, I've not immunized myself sufficiently that my belief of that characteristic is so entrenched in me that despite what anybody says, I'm simply saying, no, that's not the case. I know the truth about myself. So I just want to, again, just kind of encourage you, at least what's really shown up in my life, is that if I don't believe it, no matter how many people tell me it is a good thing or a bad thing, I never, ever internalize it. So how much of who you are, how much of how you are, you know, how you express yourself in the world, how much of the amazing being that you are you simply, or have you not believed for yourself, such that we don't need the external world showing or letting us know, because guess what? It doesn't really work, but that we actually believe it ourselves. So again, we don't need the external world to tell us the truth of who we are and our amazingness. We simply know it, and we don't look externally for it to be validated or, in fact, invalidated. I think that's me saying thank you at this time.
So, no, I think we do need to say thank you for showing up for the experience. So I'm very inspired, because when you were talking about being authentic, be brave, to be whole, you know, CJ, you will remember our director during our EMBA said, authenticity is a moment-to-moment choice-making process about a way of being in the world. So it's being present to the emotions that you're feeling. It's being present to the biases that you have about yourself and owning up to them and showing up to them. So thank you for showing up for the experience. So questions, comments? Oh, whoa! Okay, here's one. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't think it was going to start here.
Well, it's there.
Sure, Zimbini. I'm actually in awe. Your story, seamless, very genuine, and I actually don't know how to start. I think the first thing that came to mind is just say yes to yourself in every way. Your walk, your past, your present, your future. And it took me to, I guess, to an experience. I was given quite a number of opportunities to actually write articles or being featured, and I always said no. I don't know why, but I said no. And last year we had a conference, a webinar that I needed to attend, and for some reason someone noticed, and they could tell that I'm from Old Mutual, and then they reached out to me, and they said, "Can you please write an article for CHRO?" Okay, what do I write about? But I remembered, I said, I'm going to say yes, and let's see what happens. Let me be surprised. And it was such a thrilling experience. And what I'm hearing from you is like, just say yes. Say yes to the pain. Acknowledge it. Say yes to the good experience. Say yes to your own difficulties as a mom, as a manager, as a leader. Say yes to an opportunity when they say go study. Just see what happens. And yeah, I think you just pressed a whole lot of buttons.
I'm sorry.
No. Good ones. Because they actually make my journey just as rich. And I think for me, one of the biggest thing is just forgive yourself, because you cannot be everything to everyone. Sometimes you will fail your kids, and I've seen it. But also own up to it. Tell them, I know I didn't do it right, and because I don't know everything, right? And before I was your mom, I was just a girl, right? So when you were born, I became your mom, right? So I don't know everything, and I'm going to apologize and be better, because when you know better, you do better. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I react?
Yes, while Takwin is going to Mel. Yes, please go.
Sorry, I didn't get your name. Yvonne, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel that what I've done today matters because you're able to reflect on your own story. So thank you for sharing. And thank you to me for showing up and sharing my story as well. I want to just share with you a quote I read, I think it was past weekend. It's the new Brené Brown book. And she was reflecting on boundaries. Like if you were to truly just explain what boundaries are. And I really loved what she said. She said, having boundaries is creating space or creating spaces where I can love you and love myself simultaneously. So I want to say that what you've said reminded me of that as well. And I think I'm grateful for your comment. It validates for me why I was here today.
Thank you, Yvonne.
My heart is beating now. But first, we didn't see your legs here from the back. So
I think for the people who are virtual as well, Estee Lauder and Aspen, you might want to see these legs. Yeah.
So from my side, when you spoke about burnout, you mentioned self-compassion, kindness, and healing. But I just wanted to add to that. When I went through that, I was at my most vulnerable. What mattered to me most, or what came out very strong, was the compassion that I got from other women. And it is quite a coincidence that lady is here today, because I got so much compassion and support from a lady in our business and a true mentor to me. So that really struck to me when I felt so weak, the support I got from Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm simply compelled to come over and give you a hug because I know what burnout feels like, right? So just give me a moment, everyone.
And then I think we'll have Lucia.
Hi, Zimbini. So I'm Shafika, 1987.
You got it!
Yes. So I think for me, I felt like you were speaking to my soul. And the reason that is because I'm a mom of two, boy and girl. I'm a marketing manager. And one of my values is about kindness. And one of the incidents that recently, I think I've faced quite a lot. I've got parents who have lived through apartheid, and a lot of what they've been taught, it's basically just been conditioned to their way of thinking, right? So that, they think they're doing their best, they do everything they can, but at the end of the day, they can only give me as much as they can. So recently, my daughter, who's in grade 4, was excluded at school because she didn't want to partake in the girl activities, okay? And the girl activities were modeling and practicing TikTok videos. And my daughter came home and she says, Mom, but I love soccer and I love to climb trees. And obviously, sitting with that pain and encouraging her to feel it and to acknowledge it and to actually go through the anger and the acceptance and all of the different stages of it. What was really great to see was the next morning, she decided to put on a hoodie with Kindness Club embroidered on it, went to school and had to hand in a poem. And I learned the evening that a poem said, I am a girl, I love soccer. I am a girl, I climb trees. And she came home feeling really just overwhelmed and proud. And I think if we can instill that in our kids, because we have opportunities such as these, I think it's only going to make for a wonderful life for them, and also one that we can be proud of as parents. So I really resonated with you today, because I see you've accomplished so much more, but I see so much of you in my story. And I was really touched by it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Shafika, 1987.
Thank you for
we'll
sharing
close
your story.
off with Licia. Licia?
Hi, Licia.
Just a very quick comment. Thank you, Fortune. Thank you. Zimbini, 1982. When we all go onto the website to choose the outfits that we're going to choose, this self-reflection, your journey, your process, everything that you have gone through, it feels as if you've put it into your clothes, and we're going to be buying the stuff that you've shown us today. And I just think that's so magnificent. It suddenly struck me, sitting here looking at you, that you are putting out clothes into the world for women to wear that are going to imbue that journey, that learning, and that stuff. So thank you for making clothes now.
Thank you, Licia. It's fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for the comments. Beautiful.
So Licia actually happens to be a common career strategist for a few people in the room. So it's lovely to have you, me included. So thank you. Zimbini, on behalf of Luminary, courtesy of Estee Lauder, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you, my friend.
Thank you, friend. So we are 10 minutes behind schedule. So it's 25 minutes to. I would love for you to go out, go use the bathroom, go get some fresh breakfast. There's still breakfast outside. So if we can be back in here at 10 to, that gives us about 17 minutes for Niven to start. Is that okay? All right, so I'm going to I'll ask Craig to put the music a little louder in here so that you know that the party is in here, not out there. See you at 10 to.